note that I sent in today may not have been the source of a couple of your questions, but I intended for some of those to be addressed. I'm going to come back to that in a second. The first thing is that I have had interactions with Joey. Thank you, Joey. And Jeff and I have communicated. I've also communicated with lawyers who sent letters out threatening people with action and claiming that there was 30 days notice that had been given when 30 days notice had not been given. We worked things out. We had a survey this week. In fact, just so you know, everybody involved, of course, my wife said, first of all, you need to make sure they know that back in 1779, John Burns was fought in the Revolutionary War, and he bought a land grant of 500 acres down there. And a lot of those burns are still around, not necessarily the same land. But in my interactions, I have asked this question a couple of times, Mr. Arrington, and I would like to have you answer if you would. As you know, Mr. John Deeks of Doyle Land wrote to me, and he said, typically it's rare for an underground utility to co-opt highway right-of-way. It happens, but it's cost prohibitive since the highway reserved the right to widen the road, go through the expenses. And he said, because of that variable, it is rarer, especially outside of congested areas, to have your gas pipelines enter your right-of-ways. Do you agree with his assessment that it is rare to find your natural gas pipelines near highway right-of-ways?
So, again, it depends on the specifics. So it would depend on the type of pipeline and the type of road.
So let's talk about Chatham County. So, do you have any existing pipelines that are near Highway 421?
Near highway, we do not have any pipelines within the right of way highway 421, no.
Now, I'm not saying within it, do you sometimes have your own right of way outside of the highway right of way?
Not along highway 421, no.
How about 64?
64, we do have some pipelines that are along the business section in Siler City, on the
Between Pittsburgh and
between Pittsburgh and Siler City, no sir.
How about the Moncure Pittsburgh Road that runs between those two towns?
Without looking at a map, I can't tell you exactly, but we may on the northern end of it as you're in Pittsburgh, but not for the majority of it, for sure.
Then when you were talking about the siting locations and beginning your presentation on the current siting, it began, from what I heard, with where we are today. Did you have, what was the process that was the beginning of the siting process before you had actual landowners that you were looking for? Something had to happen to go through figuring out the current process. Were there in fact options, multiple options considered in the before this particular site was selected?
So that is outside of my scope as well as far as.
So who would know the answer to that question?
That's a good question. I'd have to find out from the project team, and I can find out and get back to you.
Can you post the answers to all this on the Enbridge website so people here, I mean, if you get in touch with them, I would know what it is. It'd be nice to have the answer somewhere where all the public can find it.
Yeah. Our typical protocol is to try to do that, and so ultimately at the end of the day, we try to answer a question once, and that way you can go and revisit it as much as you want to. So more than likely that question will end up on our Q&A on the website.
The other thing is kind of my explanation so that you understand the importance of your communications internally. My process began with a call from a fellow named Bruce Reynolds with Doyle Land. I had received the first letter that was not signed by Enbridge. It had no name of Enbridge. It had no phone number. It had no address of Enbridge. And my cousin Doris, who you heard from, pointed out, how do we know this was even sent by Enbridge? But I trusted Bruce Reynolds. We had a nice conversation before Doris Sue got on my case. If you listen to Doris Sue sometimes, Next thing I got was an email from, or a letter from John Deeks, who I just quoted. There was nothing to suggest that was even aware of Bruce Reynolds, and that Bruce Reynolds of Doyle Land contacted him. That was a bad beginning for me. And while I'm tempted to apologize for my reaction earlier tonight, I noticed that I'm not the most volatile person here. I just compete for that contest. At 9:09 a.m. this morning, I previously sent to Mr. Arrington and to a website my questions that were pretty exhaustive. I understand why you can't answer them all. At 9:09, Ms. Wright, Julia Wright, does anybody know Julia Wright, strategic? Oh, there she is. Hey, Julia. Thank you for trying. She wrote back and said, "Thank you for providing your questions. Advance submission to this event is not required, but we look forward to meeting you and addressing those questions." So I was pretty upset when I thought that my questions had been intended.
So we did receive your questions. I received them personally from my email, as you know, and we have them here. You want me to read through those? Or do you have them?
I have them. Well, let me see. I think that we've covered most of them, at least some others you may add on to something that I did not catch in there.
I mean, if we have been able to answer them, that's great. If we missed some,
Well, a very important one that I had asked that I think you've answered, and I think that it's worth you going ahead and giving the answer if it is negative. Will you consider the existing right-of-ways, yours, the DOT, and other utilities along US 421, US 1, and/or US 15501 to maximize the use of already disturbed soils and minimize the use of properties where no easement has ever existed?
so again, with those roads, and I apologize that I don't remember the controlled access according to the North Carolina DOTs. That's how that classifies it in. So we are not allowed to locate inside the DOT's right, and those controlled access roads.
And my expansion is a little bit beyond that. I don't know where the right-of-way ends and whether it's possible to be outside of that. But certainly, from the perspective of a landowner who is having undisturbed soil and watching your 70 acres cut in half by an easement, it does ask the question, could we acquire an easement just outside of that right-of-way? And more importantly, you've got access to maintenance that is a lot more convenient for you, and equally importantly from the perspective of many of us, and I thought about this some, where we talk about the safety issues, we talk about no matter how safe we are, we have some leaks out of the pipelines. We do have accidents. When they're along the roadside, they're right there with other risks that we know go on with those roads. And I certainly want you to know that I think many of us here would encourage you to reconsider that, and I can assure you that I'm going to be contacting the governor's office and asking him about this restricted access stuff and letting them know that there's a lot of people in Chatham County who would like for the Department of Transportation to share some flexibility for this project.
We appreciate